El Mencho, from avocado grower to powerful cartel boss. Are you ready for a journey into the dark and dangerous world of one of Mexico's most notorious cartel bosses? Then welcome to this video, where we will be taking a closer look at the rise of a drug capon. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, popularly known as El Mencho. From humble beginnings as an avocado grower, El Mencho rose through the ranks to become the head of the powerful Jalisco New Generation Cartel. But his rise to power wasn't easy. It took a combination of ambition, cunning, and brutality. From his rise to power to the secret dealings that kept his empire running. In this video, you will get a unique inside look into the world of one of the most wanted drug traffickers. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Born on 17 July 1966 to poor parents in the rural community of Culotitla, Aguililla in Mexico, where he attended primary school but dropped out in the 5th grade due to his parents' lack of funds. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, popularly known as El Mencho, grew up cultivating avocados. He had 5 brothers, Juan, Miguel, Antonio, Marin, and Abraham. And by the time little Nemesio was 14, he started guarding marijuana plantations in the area, which is a typical career path for most young boys from low-income families. While working as a guard in the area, he saved us as much as he could because he wanted a better life for himself and illegally moved to California. Now, because of his immigration status, he had to use different names like Ruben Avila and Jose Lopez Prieto, among many others, to conceal his identity, and that was the beginning of the criminal life of El Mencho. He got involved in a life of crime, and at the age of 19, he was arrested by the San Francisco police for stolen property and carrying a loaded gun, according to border entry records. El Mencho crossed the US-Mexico border several times during the late 1980s under other names, and according to multiple reports, it was around this time he became involved in the production and trade of meth in Redwood City, California, with his brother-in-law Abigail Gonzalez Valencia, and this was just the beginning. In 1989, El Mencho was arrested again in San Francisco for selling narcotics. It was then that his illegal immigrant status came to the notice of the authorities and he was deported to Mexico, but yet again he re-entered the US and resettled in San Francisco, and while others will thank their lucky stars and do all they can to lay low, El Mencho had other ideas. In 1992, he was arrested again with his brother-in-law Abraham, this time on federal charges in Sacramento, California. And according to the court records, El Mencho were busted while trying to seal a heroin deal. You see, Abraham was in charge of securing the deal, while El Mencho, who was just 26 years old at the time, was on the lookout. However, he paid close attention to his brother, and what he saw out began to worry him. He suspected that the people they were selling drugs to were undercover policemen. After the deal, he discussed his suspicions with Abraham and told him if he wanted to stay out of jail, they must not do business with those buyers anymore. When Abraham asked El Mencho how he came to this conclusion, El Mencho told him he had noticed that they handed them well-stacked notes and not wrinkled ones like other regular buyers used to do. Unfortunately for them, the police had seen all they needed to already, and 3 weeks later, the same policemen would arrest them. In 1994, the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California sentenced him to 5 years in prison for conspiracy to distribute heroin, and they were held in the Big Spring Correctional Center in Texas. However, after 3 years, in January 1997, he was released and finally deported back to Mexico. When he returned to Mexico, he served as a police officer in Cabo Corrientes in the state of Jalisco. During this time, he engaged in intense training and counterintelligence, but it still remains unclear why a hardened criminal like El Mencho would work with the police. As many would have expected, this job didn't last. He eventually left the force to join Millennial Cartel and to continue trafficking with drugs. Now, at first, he worked in the assassin network that protected Armando Valencia Cornelio, popularly known as El Maradona. Eventually, he went on to join a Millennial Cartel bloc that was allied with a well-known cartel, the Sinaloa Cartel. And by the turn of the century, they basically became a subsidiary of the Sinaloa Cartel, which was under the leadership of Nacho Coronel, who just happened to be the Sinaloa Cartel's co-founder. Now, if anything is known about Coronel, it's the fact that this man was one of the most brilliant and ruthless narcotics businessmen in the world. He was more popularly known as the King of Crystal for his expertise in the meth trade. He also controlled the Guadalajara trafficking zone for Sinaloa. Together, they moved drugs, managed finances, and even act as enforcers for the Sinaloa cartel, and they mainly operated in the states of Jalisco and Colima. But things went south in 2010, following the gruesome murder of Nacho Coronel and the capture of Millennial Cartel leader Oscar Orlando Nava Valencia, popularly known as El Lobo. There was a power vacuum in the Millennial Cartel's leadership, and someone had to fill it. El Mencho believed he could be the one to take that position, but unfortunately for him, the Sinaloa higher-ups thought otherwise and installed a colleague. This infuriated El Mencho and his loyalists. Betrayals and assassinations became the order of the day, and after some time, this internal war became a full-blown civil war in the streets of Guadalajara and Jalisco, which led to the Millennial Cartel splitting into 2 factions, Los Torcidos and La Resistencia. These 2 breakaway divisions engaged in a battle for control over drug trafficking in Jalisco. El Mencho emerged as the leader of the Los Torcidos, which eventually evolved into present-day CJNG. He drew the first blood raining fire and brimstone on his enemies, killing anyone remotely affiliated with his rivals until he finally won the war and consolidated his influence in western Mexico. With El Mencho came a level of savagery that was unprecedented even by narco standards. He was nothing compared to any cartel leader seen before, not even El Chapo. Killing became a sport for El Mencho. There was mass killings and people were kidnapped and tortured. He needed to be as ruthless as possible because he wanted to clear the way for the drug lord's expansionist agenda for Tijuana. Now, one might wonder, Why Tijuana? Well, at that time, Tijuana belonged in a lower cartel's territory, and it was an important drug trafficking corridor that served easy access to many of the major U.S. western cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Las Vegas, and some others. Reportedly, at least $1 billion worth of drugs ran through the city, and El Mencho wanted it all to himself. In 2013, he began creeping into the territory, unleashing insane levels of violence which had become his trademark at this point. This violence was targeted at Sinaloa distributors, and it led to a war between the two cartels, which was exactly what El Mencho wanted. But he wasn't fighting one war. As he battled El Chapo for Tijuana, he also got into a peculiar war with the Mexican state. Under El Mencho, the CJNG began expanding and basically took control of drug trafficking in Jalisco and surrounding states. In August 2012, there was an attempt by Mexican security forces to capture the drug kingpin in Guadalajara. It ended up as an exercise in futility as El Mencho escaped thanks to members of CJNG to evade the police and allow members time to flee. The cartel created dozens of roadblocks, setting fire to vehicles on key roads throughout the city. 6 members of CJNG were reportedly killed in this raid. El Mencho had used narcos money to set up several legitimate businesses around the world, which were run by his family members. The US found about this and they started targeting the businesses. They arrested members of his family, even his son, and began freezing their accounts. El Mencho became furious, and not long after, he officially declared war on both the military and the police, and from there the tables turned. On 19th of March 2015, the federal police were on a completely different mission on a Jalisco town called Ocotlan. And what was really crazy about this incident was that the mission they were on had nothing at all to do with the CGNG, but still CGNG ambushed them, killing 5 officers. 2 weeks later, in Guadalajara, the cartel carried out an assassination attempt on the Commissioner of Public Security, Alejandro Solorio, spraying his armored truck with more than 200 bullets. And as if that was not enough, 1 week after, members of the CJNG attacked a convoy of federal police who were returning from a mission with machine guns and grenade launchers. 15 officers were killed. Meanwhile, CJNG lost no men. That attack still remains the deadliest day for Mexican law enforcement in about a decade. But that wasn't all. A few weeks later, it was the turn of the Mexican army. They launched an operation to take down El Mencho once and for all. But as they got down from their 2 EC-725 Super Cougar helicopter, El Mencho's men opened fire with assault rifles and Russian-made RPGs. One of the helicopter's rotors was hit, sending it crashing down in flames, killing 8 soldiers. CJNG had basically declared war on an entire sovereign state, and this man still wasn't done. He quickly followed it up with complete mayhem that paralyzed the whole of Jalisco. Buses and trucks were hijacked and burned, gas stations were set ablaze, and the whole city was in complete chaos, so the Mexican government sent 10,000 foot soldiers to secure the state. What the government didn't know, however, was that this chaos wasn't just random. It was well controlled. El Mencho used it as a decoy for the army while he escaped, and By the time the Mexican army came to terms with what was happening, he had gone off the radar. Now, the hunt for El Mencho has become personal, and one could safely say the Mexican army and the government will go to any length to find this man. He has become the most wanted person in Mexico, with both governments offering up to 12 million for information leading to his arrest. Today, the CJNG is in a serious war for Sinaloa-held territories like Baja California and even El Chapo's home state of Sinaloa itself. If you loved this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to continue to enjoy videos like this. Check out these other videos on your screen if you liked videos like this. See you all in the next one.